Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm getting into what you need to think about and what you need to do to start your freelance graphic design business. Now, if you already have your own freelance business, you might still get some good tips out of this. So stick around. You'll get business tips. You'll get some tips that are related to legal and financial considerations, insurance, marketing, and others. I decided to talk about this because a lot of graphic designers have asked me about this topic, and I've seen a lot of them asking online, what do they need to do? How do they start their freelance graphic design business? Now, to give you a bit of a background, I actually started my business before I went full-time in it. I worked a full-time job and freelanced for 7 years before going out on my own full-time. And that was in 2004. So it doesn't have to be something where you flip a switch that go from full-time employee to full-time freelancer. Now let's start with some fun stuff, and that's creating your branding. So the first thing you need to think about is your business name. Are you going to use your personal name or are you going to create a business name? Now, you don't have to create a business name to go into business for yourself, but it's definitely something to think about. I actually used my personal name at first, and then I called my business something else before I settled on Grotzer Graphics in the early 2000s. It's definitely helpful to think about this early on because you want to make sure of a few things, and that is that the domain is available, that the social media handles are available, that the business name that you want to use is not already registered as a business or trademarked. You also want things to be named as consistently as possible across all platforms. So from your website domain name to your social media handles, all that, you want it to be as consistent as possible. And I actually went into a lot of detail and gave a lot of tips for naming your freelance graphic design business, which you can check out in episode 68. You'll also want to design a logo and have it in all the print and web formats because it's going to be on all your marketing materials and your social media accounts. You might also want to choose typefaces that you can use in your print or PDF marketing materials and on your website. So you might consider, for instance, open source fonts such as Google Fonts, which you can download and use online too. Otherwise, what you can do is purchase web versions of fonts if they're available for that typeface, or you can find similar ones to use for the web. Now, you'll need business cards. Yes, printed business cards. They don't have to be professionally printed at first. They could just be done on those perforated business card paper sheets that you print out on your home office printer. You're going to need these on hand because you can give them out at in-person meetings and at networking events. But you could also mail them out with thank you cards or other correspondence. You might say, well, business cards are obsolete, but you know what? It only helps you if clients have something tangible in their hand. And it's also a way to stand out from other graphic designers who no longer see the need for the business card. You also need to design letterhead, which you can use for your invoices, your proposals, and your estimates, unless you're going to pay for project management or proposal software. And in that case, you're usually only able to upload a logo and then modify fonts and colors. Now, this might seem minor, but I think it's something to consider for sure, and that's labels, envelopes, and cards. I like to send out thank you cards to not only potential clients after sending them a proposal, but also to people who've referred clients. And I also sometimes send checks with notes in the mail to subcontractors. People really appreciate the extra time spent on sending a card. So it can have a lot of impact and make you more memorable. And that makes clients more likely to contact you again. And subcontractors are more likely to help you in the future because they all feel appreciated. Now for labels, I just buy the Avery labels that I can just print them off as I need. And they have templates that you can download to set them up. But I just measure where they fall on the sheet and set up my InDesign file like that. And then for envelopes, I use lime green envelopes that match my green brand color instead of just using plain white so that they stand out in the mail. Now the next set of things relate to your website. And you'll want to get that website up and running and make sure it's always available to attract your potential clients. Now, in the very beginning, you can just set up a page with a few portfolio pieces and your contact information. But after that, you want to spend more time on it. But I don't want you to go spend months trying to perfect your website design because that will just prevent you from taking action and getting clients. So as soon as you can after that, when you have time, make sure the design appeals to the potential clients that you're looking to attract. If you're looking to attract legal and financial businesses, for example, the website design would have a much different look compared to, if you're targeting crafters. If you're new to the graphic design world and you're not yet at a point where you know who you want to work with or what industries you want to work with, then once you figure that out, you can modify your website to reflect that. In that online portfolio, you want to show the types of work that you want to get and also show good work. because bad work will dilute the perceived quality of your work. It will also make it look like the quality of your work is inconsistent, and prospects might wonder if it will be a crapshoot getting quality work for their project. You'll also want to include testimonials from prior clients that you've worked with. And if you haven't had any clients before, then you can get testimonials from people that you've worked with at your job. Any comments that can speak to your design work, experience working with you, or the results from the work. Now, for domain names, you'll want to buy a domain name that's easy to remember. And I like Namecheap for buying domains. And you might want to buy more than one domain name extension, such as a .com and a .net, and so forth. And you'll also want to set it to auto-renew so it doesn't expire and you risk losing it. Somebody could swipe it up and then charge big bucks to sell it. For web hosting, you'll want a reliable web host with good uptime and support. Personally, I like Payer, I like WP Engine and A2. There's also SiteGround and Flywheel, and many others. You'll want to include some legalese in the footer. You want to put the word copyright and the year to give notice about your intellectual property, your work, and you'll want to have a linked terms of use page and a linked privacy policy page. I talked about terms of use and privacy policies with Hans and Donata from Termageddon in episode 83, so you can find out much more about that. Okay, the next thing would be an email list sign up. If you can do this sooner rather than later, create an email sign up form and put it on your website so that you can start collecting email addresses and building your list. And then you can easily let prospects know when you've added a blog post or work to your site. And this will keep you top of mind, even if they don't open or read your email, because they will still see your name in their inbox. The best way to get an email address is to trade something of value for it, such as a lead magnet, which could be a free guide with tips that they might be interested in. Some email services offer a free account up to a certain amount of email addresses. I used MailChimp a very long time ago. I've been using MailerLite for the past 4 years. I find it really easy to use. And it's free up to, I think, 1,000 subscribers. There are some more complex ones like ActiveCampaign, which I've also used. But if you're new to building your list and just looking for something easy, I definitely recommend MailerLite. Now, these next few points I talked about in episode 52 in much more detail. The first one is SEO, and you'll want to optimize the SEO of your website to increase the chances of being found by prospects when they're looking for the types of services that you provide. And you want to make darn sure that your website is responsive and mobile friendly. When I say responsive, I mean when you change the width of the browser, the website should adjust with it. You don't want anything to have to be scrolled to off screen. You want everything to be right there and adjust to the width of the screen. And that's because many potential clients might be viewing your site on a tablet or phone, and if they have to pinch and pan or scroll to get around your website, that won't be a good user experience. And if you do web design, they might wonder if you'll create a site that way for them. You'll also want to make sure that your website loads quickly so that potential clients don't get frustrated, because then they'll leave your site waiting for it to load. You can check the speed of your site with GT metrics and Pingdom. Now, for more details about what to include on your website, check out episode 52 on what designers need to put on their website and in their portfolio. The next step is to set up your social media accounts. You'll want to set up social media accounts wherever your potential clients are. They might more heavily use one platform over another, right? They might be more on LinkedIn than they are on Twitter. They may not be on Instagram, But you want to be sure that all of your account images and the post images all look consistent so that you look professional and memorable. But also, it's showing that you practice what you preach. So if you tell their clients their branding should be consistent, then yours should be too. Okay, so now let's get into some of the not so fun, but very important stuff to think about when creating your freelance business. Now, I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, and I don't play one on the podcast. So you should always consult a lawyer and accountant about your specific needs. Okay, so first off, please understand that even if it's just you as a freelancer and you're using your personal name, you're still acting as a business. So you might want to consider at this point or in the future, creating a separate business identity, whether you're going to use your personal name or a different name for your business. And the reason for this is because forming a business separates your personal assets like your house and your car and so forth from your business assets. But it can also provide protection in case you make an error in your work and someone comes after you. But besides that, some potential clients might take you more seriously because it shows that you think of yourself as a business and that you've made an investment for the long term and that you're not a fly-by-night freelancer. The most popular option is the limited liability company, also known as LLC. If you're the only owner in the LLC, then you'd be a single member LLC. What my business is. For tax purposes, you're seen as what's called a disregarded entity, and that means that you file a personal tax return with your business income on there. You also file a personal property return, which is kind of a misnomer because that's actually for your business. Your state usually charges an annual fee for that when you file it at tax time. Like in Maryland, I pay $300 per year. You can form an LLC yourself or with the help of LegalZoom or a lawyer. And it's typically not very expensive to do. But also forming an LLC in certain states might be cheaper than in your state. I have a few colleagues who formed an LLC in Delaware rather than in their home state because it was cheaper or provided more benefits for whatever reason. Another option is incorporation. And I'm not as familiar with incorporation as I am with an LLC since I've had an LLC since 2003. But from what I understand, incorporating can cost more. And there's also a lot more paperwork involved, apparently, which I believe has to be done throughout the year. So it's not like a one-time thing at tax time like with an LLC. Now, depending on where you live, you might also need to get a business license in order to conduct business. In the United States, this varies from state to state. It's also a good idea to get a separate tax ID number for your business because clients will send you a W-9 form if you're in the United States, and that's a formal request for your tax identification number. It can be uncomfortable sharing your social security number all the time. It also can be a security risk because clients will usually ask you to email back the filled out and signed W-9 form, and you might not think anything of it. But email is not secure, so you don't want to be emailing your social security number all over the place. To get a separate tax ID for your business, you would just need to apply for an EIN, which stands for Employer Identification Number, and then you would just use that instead of your social security number when you fill out a W-9. Now, when it comes to bank accounts and credit cards, it's really good to have a separate bank account and credit card for business purposes. If you form a business entity like an LLC or incorporation, then you'll want to have those in your business name. And this also applies to any PayPal, Stripe, Wise, or Payoneer accounts that you might open as a business as well. You'll also want to create a contract. If you're offering graphic design, you might only need one type of contract. But if you're offering web design, which involves a lot of other components like sharing passwords and accessing someone's site, then you might also want to have a different contract that has additional terms in it. I highly recommend investing in the services of a lawyer that understands design and intellectual property law to review your contract terms in the beginning, because that way you'll have peace of mind and you'll protect yourself. If you want more on contracts from me, I talked about contracts and estimates in episode 13. Okay, the next set of things you want to consider have to do with insurance. And there's a few types that you should look into getting. And one type is E&O, which stands for errors and omissions. It's also known as professional liability insurance. Although it's a very rare request, some clients may actually require you to have it. And what it does is it usually pays for the cost if you make a professional mistake. Like if you make a mistake in a printed piece and then it ends up having to be reprinted. When you get E&O insurance, it's recommended that you don't let that coverage lapse because that way you have continued protection and you may not be protected otherwise. Now, I don't know if you wouldn't be covered for work that you create during that lapse or if a claim was made during that time. I get my E&O insurance for like $40 a month through Freelancers Union, and I actually used to pay 10 times more for the same Hiscox policy through an insurance broker. Another type of insurance is CGL, or general liability insurance. And this is useful in case something were to happen to your computer equipment, like if there was, God forbid, like theft, fire, flood, hurricane, or something else like that. This insurance would be for that. Your renter's or your homeowner's insurance might not cover equipment for business use, including freelancing. So you want to check with your insurance carrier. It's usually cheaper to get this type of insurance through them too, because they already have other policies with you. This type of insurance might cover a financial loss if, say, a client comes to your home and then trips and falls and gets injured and then comes after you. So definitely check with your insurance carrier. And you can also learn more about this in episode 56, where I talked about how to protect your freelance business from disaster. Medical insurance is something to consider if you're going to be leaving a full-time job that has benefits and you don't have any insurance through a family member or a spouse. And I covered various options for this in episode 56. Now, another type of insurance that you may not think of as insurance is backups. Backups make sure that you can work in case your computer equipment has a mechanical issue or it gets stolen or something happens to it from a disaster. You can back up to the cloud, but then you're reliant on an internet connection. You can have an external hard drive and then you don't have to worry about that, but you can even back up to both. Whatever you do, just don't skimp on backups. The next thing you need to do is figure out the financials. And that includes the cost of all the things that I've mentioned so far, but quite a few others that I'm going to mention. You might want to put them into two buckets: a one-time investment, such as forming an LLC, and then ongoing expenses, which would be like your Adobe CC subscription and your E&O premiums, things like that. It could also be software for project management and for creating proposals and estimates and invoices. And this is important because you have to understand how much it costs you to just be in business. And we can't forget about taxes. If you're in the United States, you'll want to pay estimated quarterly taxes so that you don't end up owing them all at once, and you want to avoid penalties. You'll also need to have an idea of what your pricing is going to be to make sure that you cover all of these business expenses and can pay yourself and have profit left over. Now, if you're trying to decide when to make the move from a full-time job to full-time freelancing, you'll need to consider that a lot of your time is going to be spent managing the business and on marketing. You won't be working 8 hours a day on design work, and you might have some expenses that you didn't have as an employee. So your rate will need to compensate for that. It actually should be higher than your hourly rate was as an employee. Okay, these next steps are networking and marketing your services. Now, of course, you'll also now want to get out there and let people know about you. You want to make sure that you're on LinkedIn and that your profile is up to date and it shows some work samples. I had a really great talk with LinkedIn expert Bryn Tillman about how designers can optimize their LinkedIn profiles in episode 22. Be sure to check that out. You can also check out job boards for businesses that are looking for freelancers or subcontractors. Of course, there's also Upwork. I did an entire episode on Upwork tips as well. That was episode 66. You can also regularly post content to your blog, your social media accounts, and your email list. What I do is post the entire piece on the blog, and then I will have social media images that are teasers. Those will lead to the blog page to read the full article. In the emails I send out, I put the image and only the first paragraph, or like a lead in as to why they need to know about what I just wrote, and then I linked the full article. And I'll also sometimes include a new piece of work that was added to the portfolio and then have it continue off to that page. The purpose of doing it that way is to get them to your website. The purpose of posting and sending out the email is to keep you top of mind and to also demonstrate your expertise. I hope this information has been helpful to you. If it was, would you please do me a favor? Help me out by sharing this content to help me reach more designers. I'm really trying to grow my audience. Please give it a like on YouTube and comment on the episode page at creative-boost.com or under the YouTube video. And if you're listening, not reading, be sure to check out the show notes to get the links to the episodes and services that I mentioned.